Representative Lucy McBath just delivered a devastating blow that should terrify anyone who believes the FBI exists to protect Americans, not political agendas. In a brutal exchange, she systematically exposed how Kash Patel has gutted domestic terrorism units while diverting agents to traffic stops and immigration raids, all while violent extremists operate freely across the nation.
It's back. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming in today, Mr. Patel. In the past few months, the country has experienced a string of horrific, high-profile attacks that have been motivated by racial hatred or political ideology. A shooter attacked the CDC headquarters, firing hundreds of rounds and killing a police officer. An arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro's residence, with the governor and his family actually inside. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated earlier this year. Clark and Charlie Kirk was murdered last week. Bomb threats have been made against HBCUs and the DNC, and just the list goes on and on. I only have just a few minutes today, so I don't want to take a lot of time to go into all the countless and devastating violent crimes and incidents that have happened at our schools or on our streets and in our communities that have just been happening all year long. Mr. Patel, just yes or no, is this type of political violence ever acceptable in your eyes?
No.
I'm glad that we agree that these heinous acts designed to instill fear and division in our nation are never, ever acceptable, yet each of these incidents has recently taken place under your watch. The FBI's website states that protecting the United States from terrorist acts is the FBI's #1 priority, including from domestic terrorists. Is this still your #1 priority?
Domestic terrorism?
Preventing domestic terrorism.
Our #1 priorities are protecting the homeland and international terrorism and crushing violent crime, and domestic terrorism sort of interlays between both of those.
Okay, so well, then I'm glad that you're giving us the right answer, but unfortunately, your actions kind of tell a different story. Earlier this year, you granted the ranks of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section. This is the section of the FBI that is most directly responsible for addressing political violence in our country by preventing attacks from occurring and effectively responding to them if they do. The agents in this section are the ones who stopped an individual stockpiling weapons, who planned to attack schools and churches in Florida and seized bombs made by an ISIS sympathizer in New Orleans. And instead of ensuring that this section has all the resources that it needs at a time when its mission is critical, you fired its decorated veteran FBI agents who have served their country proudly under Republican and both Democratic presidents, and you scrapped the tools that they developed to fight domestic terrorism, including the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database.
I mean, most of that is just not true. We have 1,700 current DT managed programs. We're up 300% in the amount of cases we brought against nihilistic, violent extremists, including 764, wishing to harm our children. The FBI and the men and women are getting after that problem set more than ever because I've unleashed them to do so. And any insinuation that these tragic occurrences across the country are somehow singularly my fault or disgusting because that watershed goes
Mr.
down to the
Patel,
men
I'm
and
going to
women at the
reclaim my time.
FBI,
Mr. Patel,
and they
I'm
are
going to
not
reclaim my time.
responsible
Mr.
for it.
Chairman,
I'm
I'd
happy
like
to
to
work
enter
with
a
you
unanimous
to get them what they need.
Gentlelady
request.
controls the time. Unanimous consent request. She'll state a request.
Thank you very much. Into the record, an article from Reuters titled FBI Scales Back Staffing, Tracking of Domestic Terrorism, Probes Sources Say. Thank you very much.
Without
I
objection.
appreciate that. So, Mr. Patel, and it isn't just the domestic terrorism operations section. Under your watch, agents are fully diverting their attention to these anti-immigrant and city takeover operations, leaving our children vulnerable to dangerous networks of online predators, both domestic and international. You pulled more than 120 FBI agents from their normal duties to operate sobriety checks and conduct traffic stops, exposing the FBI's fleet of unmarked cars and thereby making it harder for the FBI to combat violent criminal gangs, foreign intelligence services, and drug traffickers in the process.
That's simply not true. If we were not able to do two things at one time, how would we be
Patel, I
seizing
reclaim
record
my
amounts of
time. I reclaim my
fentanyl?
time.
23,000
Chairman, I'd like to
violent
enter
felons have been
into the
arrested.
Time belongs to the
Consent
More
gentlelady.
than twice as many as
request.
Time
last
belongs to
year.
the gentlelady from Georgia.
Thank you very much. And this request basically is, it is an article from Reuters, which quotes law enforcement officers familiar with agents who once covered child exploitation cases, but now focus on immigration child exclusive. Thousands of agents diverted to Trump immigration track down. Mr. Patel, in the short time I have left, your tenure as director of FBI has been somewhat problematic. Americans are left definitely less safe under your watch. You have gutted the FBI's ability to keep safe from domestic terrorism. You have sent FBI agents to conduct traffic stops and round up hardworking immigrants who pose no danger to public safety. People even President Trump referred to as good, long-time workers. Your job is to protect and serve the American public.
Time to the
You have
gentlelady.
spent your time protecting heinous individuals and using the FBI to serve as a political circus. You at times have appeared unequipped,
Time
and
of
this
the
country
gentlelady has
deserves better, and
expired.
I yield.
Gentlelady yields
May I
back.
respond?
Sure can.
Simply put, what is it? Are we failing? If we're failing, how are we arresting 23,000 violent felons? Twice as many as this time last year. Are we failing? Because if we're failing, how are we seizing 1,500 kilograms of meth, 25% increase from last year? Are we failing? Because we captured 4 top 10 FBI most wanted from around the world in 7 months. That's more than the entirety of the last administration. Are we failing? Because we put 1,500 child predators in prison. Are we failing? Because we dismantled 300 human trafficking networks. Which is it? You don't like me, that's fine. But don't you dare disparage the men and women of the FBI that are producing record results in historic fashion to protect this country. They are kicking ass for America, and they're going to continue to do so.
And we appreciate your leadership. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
What Representative McBath accomplished in that exchange wasn't just political theater, it was a masterclass in exposing institutional betrayal disguised as law enforcement leadership. She methodically demonstrated how the FBI under Patel has abandoned its core mission while claiming record success, revealing a fundamental corruption of priorities that leaves Americans less safe. McBath's opening was strategic. She listed specific recent attacks: CDC shooting, Pennsylvania governor's arson, Minnesota House Speaker assassination, not as random violence, but as evidence of a pattern the FBI should be preventing. When she got Patel to agree that political violence is unacceptable, she created a baseline that made his subsequent defensive responses look even more hollow. The domestic terrorism operations section, cuts McBath represents something more sinister than budget trimming. This unit exists specifically to track and prevent the kind of coordinated extremist violence that has exploded across America. When you dismantle the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database, you're not streamlining operations. You're deliberately blinding the agency to patterns that could prevent mass casualties. It's like removing smoke detectors during fire season and calling it efficiency. McBath's immigration enforcement criticism hits at a deeper institutional problem. When FBI agents trained in counterterrorism and organized crime are pulled into traffic stops and immigration raids, you're converting federal law enforcement into local policing. That's not just resource misallocation, it's mission drift that compromises specialized expertise built over decades. Those 20 agents conducting sobriety checks should be tracking foreign intelligence networks or dismantling child exploitation rings. Patel's defensive response reveals everything wrong with this approach. He rattled off arrest numbers and seizure statistics like a prosecutor seeking re-election, but those metrics don't address McBath's fundamental point. You can arrest 23,000 violent felons and still fail at your primary mission if those arrests come at the cost of preventing coordinated domestic terrorism. Success in law enforcement isn't just about quantity, it's about preventing the catastrophic attacks that numbers can't capture. The most telling moment came when McBath referenced Reuters reporting about agents being diverted from child exploitation cases to immigration enforcement. Child predator networks operate internationally with the sophisticated digital infrastructure that requires sustained, specialized investigation. When you pull those agents for immigration sweeps, you're trading complex long-term public safety work for politically visible short-term operations. That's not law enforcement prioritization. It's political theater masquerading as public safety. Patel's final outburst about kicking ass for America actually proved McBath's point. He conflated criticism of his leadership with attacks on FBI agents, a deflection tactic that avoids accountability while wrapping himself in the flag. Career FBI agents didn't choose to gut domestic terrorism tracking or conduct traffic stops. Those were executive decisions that Patel made or endorsed. The institutional damage here extends beyond policy disagreements. When the FBI becomes a tool for political priorities rather than evidence-based public safety, it loses credibility with the communities it needs to cooperate. Local law enforcement, international partners, and citizens all rely on the FBI's reputation for nonpartisan professionalism. Once that's compromised, investigations suffer because witnesses don't trust, sources don't cooperate, and other agencies question your motives. What makes this exchange particularly damaging is how it reveals the bureaucratic sleight of hand that allows institutional corruption to flow. Patel's statistics, 23,000 arrests, 1,500 kilograms of drugs seized, sound impressive until you realize they represent a fundamental misunderstanding of the FBI's unique role. Local police arrest violent felons and seize drugs every day. The FBI exists to handle cases that require federal resources, specialized expertise, and long-term investigation. When you brag about doing local police work, you're admitting you've abandoned federal law enforcement. The timing of these policy changes matters enormously. McBath's reference to recent political violence isn't coincidental. Domestic terrorism incidents have surged precisely when the FBI scaled back its tracking capabilities. The CDC shooting, political assassinations, and coordinated attacks she mentioned represent exactly the kind of threats that require the institutional memory and pattern recognition that databases provide. Without that infrastructure, each incident gets treated as isolated rather than part of larger extremist networks. This connects to a broader erosion of institutional expertise that has consequences far beyond any single administration. FBI agents spend years developing specialized knowledge about terrorist financing, encrypted communications, international networks, and radicalization patterns. When you reassign those agents to immigration enforcement, you're not just losing their current contributions, you're destroying the accumulated expertise that takes decades to rebuild. It's institutional vandalism disguised as operational efficiency. McBath's exchange exposes the core question facing American law enforcement. Are we building institutions that protect public safety based on evidence and expertise, or are we converting them into instruments of political agenda? The answer determines whether the FBI remains a respected investigative agency or becomes another casualty of partisan warfare, leaving Americans vulnerable to the very threats it was designed to prevent.